Good afternoon. It is officially 5 o'clock p.m. It's May the 30th, the last day of school for students. And I know you're happy to get your students back in your houses all day long. And I hope you enjoy your summer. And this is your boardroom. Welcome to Johnston County Board of Education special session meeting today. We do have a quorum. We have 6 out of our 7 board members. Mr. Sutton is on a business trip out of state. So we will begin our board meeting with an invocation by Ronald Johnston and the Pledge of Allegiance by Terry Sessions. If we could all stand, please. Okay, this is our favorite part of our board meetings each and every month, and this is Special Recognition Day, and we're excited about it. Ms. Roberts, please come forward. This is your boardroom, so please go behind the board and roam anywhere you want to take pictures. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wooten. Members of the board, Lady Vice Chair Dr. Smith and Dr. Renfro, as Mr. Wooten said, we'll start this meeting off right with recognizing students who have done extremely well at their schools and beyond. And we'll start with our academic competition winners, brought to you by Elizabeth Dahlman, who is Executive Director of Secondary Education, along with their coaches. Ms. Dahlman.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the board, and Dr. Renfro. It is my pleasure to help recognize 4 of our academic competition winning teams. We will start with High School Battle of the Books. 42 high school students representing 6 high schools in Johnston County participated in our annual Battle of the Books competition on March 22nd. Cleveland High School placed first, allowing them to advance to the regional competition on April 9th in Lewisburg, where they placed second. To introduce them, please welcome their coach, Stephanie Homont.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I would like to go ahead and introduce you to the Cleveland High School Battle of the Books team. We have Shiloh Wrigley. Come on up, Shiloh. Sarah Clodfelter, Jessica Brown, and Adam Smith.
Next, we will recognize Elementary School Battle of the Books. 226 elementary school students representing 22 schools in Johnston County participated in our annual Battle of the Books competition on March 6th. Pine Level Elementary placed in first, allowing them to advance to the regional competition on April 13th at Polenta Elementary School, where they placed third. To introduce them, we welcome their coach, Karen Parker.
Thank you so much for hosting us today. I'm proud to introduce just the greatest kids in Johnston County to you today. Wilman Barnes, Gracie Corbett, Anthony Franco, Savannah Higgins, Emily Holland, Katie Holloman, Josh Leonard. I told him I probably wouldn't remember the names. Juan Martinez, Addison Parrish, and Ella Pilkington.
Our third academic competition is Elementary School Science Olympiad. 256 elementary school students representing 12 schools in Johnston County participated in our annual Science Olympiad competition on April 6th. Polenta Elementary took first place in both varsity and junior varsity. To introduce these two teams, I welcome their coach, Kelly Davis.
For our varsity team, we have Abril Toledo Lopez, Brianna Allen, Carden Brown, Caroline Marslander, Evie Eaton, Joshua Dolmain, Gavin Bledsoe, Nicholas Narito, Xander Maserati, and Yasmin Mendoza that are with us here today. For our junior varsity team, representing our junior varsity, the members that we have present with us today are Cameron Sasser, Lauren McCombs, Malia Burciago, Nathaniel Burciaga, Sienna Bush, Timothy Escador, and Vera Isaacs. Make sure you're still there.
You just haven't seen what I've been doing behind your back. You gotta laugh, keep from crying.
Oh, bless. I can't with him. I just can't.
I'm the hype guy.
We also had several other students that couldn't be with us today. Total between varsity and junior varsity, there were a total of 36 kids, 18 on each team. And to help facilitate all that, I had some wonderful coaches and volunteers because can't do it without them. So I'd like to recognize them. It's Jeff Bush, Jefferson Mosquera, Rich Lezinski, Seth Isaacs, Caroline, or not Caroline, that's her daughter, Beverly Marslander, Kate Domain, and Michelle McCombs. Thank you.
Last but certainly not least, I would like to welcome our Science Olympiad organizers. These are two of our teachers at Corinth Holders High School, Wendy and Andy Srinivasan. They worked tirelessly to put, and I cannot emphasize that enough, tirelessly to put on this incredible opportunity for our students. It could not happen without them. We would like to recognize them for their hard work and dedication to promoting science and engagement in Johnston County Public Schools. Wendy and Andy.
We'll give our parents just a couple of seconds to come in for our scholar athletes.
Parents, you might not have heard this, but you're welcome anywhere behind the board. If you want to take pictures, please feel free to roam around the boardroom as you see fit.
All right. Here to recognize your next two recognition items, honorees, our scholar athletes, is Brent Walston, our Director of Athletics. Brent.
Welcome, Mr. Walston.
Good afternoon. Gives me extreme honor to introduce some state champions to you today. Our first is Miss Haley Woolery. Haley is a track state champion. She's a junior from West Johnston. You might remember Haley. We introduced her to you guys in February as she was named the All-State cross-country team. But this spring, she won the 3A state championship in the 1,600 meter, the mile run, Friday, May 17th, running the mile in 5 minutes and 2 seconds. The same day, she also finished second in the state in the 2-mile run, which is the 3,200 meter, helping the Lady Wildcats, the West Johnston Lady Wildcats, to an 8th place finish as a team. So state champion in the mile, 3A, Haley Woolery from West Johnston High School. Congratulations. And Haley is a junior, so she's got, yes, sir. Our next individual state champion, Brady Hooks. Brady is a senior from Clayton. Brady won the 3A state championship in boys golf on May 14th shooting an even par 144 to win the state championship by 3 strokes in the 2-day tournament at the Foxfire Resort in the Pinehurst area to become Clayton High School's first ever individual golf state champion and only the second young man from the county to ever win the individual state championship. Based on Brady's finish, he and his teammates finished second in the state in the team championship. Individual 3A golf state champion Brady Hooks, senior from Clayton High School. Congratulations, Haley and Brady. Next is a group. Our first state tennis champions who now have won back-to-back 3A state champions, the Clayton High School boys tennis team. They won the 3A state championship Saturday, May 18th, making it 2 years in a row, finishing off an undefeated season at 19-0, also 2 years in a row, right? Undefeated, 2 years in a row. 3 members of the team won individual state championships the weekend before. Banks Evans, Banks come forward. Banks was named MVP of the team championship match. Banks won the 3A individual singles tennis championship the weekend prior. So Banks was a 2-time in 2 weekends state champion. Banks's brother Foster teamed with Sam Jones to win the 3A individual doubles championship. So Banks and Foster are brothers. Banks is a senior, Foster is a sophomore. Is that correct, Foster? So the tennis team consists of Banks Evans, Foster Evans, and who are with us today, Ty Sasser and Adam Suter. So boys come forward, and Coach Ken Stuyvesant from the Clayton 3A state tennis team. Congratulations, Coach. Thank you.
Dr. Renfro. Dr. Coates, excuse me. Wrong doctor.
Good afternoon, Mr. Board Chair, Madam Vice Chair, Board members, and Dr. Renfro. I have one item for you returning to our discussion, Exhibit 3A1. This is an action item, and I'd like to ask Anna Melizotto, she'll come forward for support. We presented this item, as you know, at the last board meeting and had some questions. So if it's okay, I'm going to launch into the questions and the answers we have, and then we'll try to answer more if we don't have enough sufficient information for you. And I'm just going to kind of go down the list, that's okay, with questions. So one of the questions was the requirements of DPI with respect to this pot of money. So our ESSA guidelines require us to only work with evidence-based activity, strategies, or intervention. So the ESEA Act directed educators to implement interventions grounded in research. So we've got that definition, and you know what that is, but we had to follow that requirement for this. So in that vein, the way this type of money works, we have to support or complete a grant, they call it a grant, and we have to meet the assurances of that grant application. So have that for us. So our assurances that we had to meet were that it would be a one-time award used only in the identified schools, which of course are our 33 TSI schools. We cannot retain any amount of that award for administrative set-aside. And sometimes in federal grants, we can use monies for administrative set-asides. This we could not. We could only use the school-assigned TSI grant funds, and it gives us a list, comprehensive needs assessment for the specific subgroups, which is why we were identified TSI to begin with. The root cause analysis specific to those subgroups for which the school was identified. NC STAR training, and you can see PDs come in here for one or more staff at those schools. PD, which provides support in addressing the needs of the subgroups for which the school was identified. And then along with the PD vein, supporting strategic planning activities in development or revision of the school improvement plan based on the subgroups for which the school was identified. And then stipends and substitutes to allow any of those things to happen in the school. So that would be stipends for teachers to hire subs so that they could participate in any of that PD. Can't use funds for salaries other than substitutes or stipends. Cannot purchase equipment. It's, you know how federal dollars are, boom, 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 strict. So that was our grant application that we sent. Now, we got, for the total grant award, $330,000. We had to, and we were notified we were getting this money in fall, November, but we didn't get the money. So as soon as we were notified that we were getting the money, we began a plan. But we didn't actually get the money until just recently in the spring. So the requirements on this money, and I believe it was April 10th, that's in my notes, they communicated to us that we could set aside, well, not set aside, but 20% of it could be used during the 1920 year as long as we encumber it by a certain date. So we have to have encumbered and spent by September 30th this school year, $262,856. We can wait on $67,000 of that and have it encumbered by next September 2020. So the majority of this money has to be spent right now. With respect to the committee and collaborations with other departments, MTSS and all of that, we initially created a committee based on, comprised of the academic officer, the executive director of federal programs, Christy Stevenson, our executive director of school improvement and accountability and program evaluation, Anna Melizotto, Ashley Radford, our director of exceptional children, and Jenna McKeel, school improvement, and she was on the district MTSS committee. They drafted a proposal as soon as we were notified that we were getting the money. And remember, TSI schools were on that list because of a targeted subgroup. So our targeted subgroups at one school might be students with disabilities, at others it might be an ethnicity, it might be an economically disadvantaged. So we tried to have everyone from those programs present. They created, based on that information on the TSI identification, in addition to our 2016 Advanced Ed Accreditation Report that targeted things that they felt we needed to do to improve our schools, subgroup equity, and all of those things. So they considered all of that and drafted a proposal. That proposal was presented to the principals of the TSI schools at the January 15th K-12 principals meeting. Then the principals gave feedback to the committee went back to work, took the final proposal back to the principals in April 2nd at a K-12. And all of the, that's when we presented this plan, and all of the other principals were on board for approval. They wanted to move forward with this specific initiative. Education partners that we considered in this proposal, apart from ASCD, we consulted, of course, with ASCD, Department of Public Instruction, Better Lesson, and the SERVE Center at UNCG. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a university-based research development and evaluation assistance center, and they work with educators and policy makers. So they are grounded in research, so we consulted with them as well. Another question was regarding the RFP. Did we have an RFP? If we did not, why not? So there's several comments in that area. Number one, at the Big 12 Chief Academic Officers meeting, when everyone was notified that we were having this money, this was discussed, the best way to address it. And the discussion there was not to encourage the use of RFPs unless our district required it. Our district has never used an RFP for a PD proposal, but that was a discussion. There was one large district in that group that did do an RFP because it was a requirement for their district. The other 11 did not do one, and we've never done one, so there's a reason we didn't. Now, I did a little research on that, so we contacted the school business division at DPI, and they said to us that an RFP is not required for non-competitive procurement as long as federal and state agencies, as long as the federal and state agencies that the funding is passed through approve a written waiver, and of course that is our grant proposal, that we have to tell them how we're going to use the money. So in this case, we just to be compliant, did submit the federal funds non-competitive procurement request form, and we worked with the Assistant Director at DPI, Leanne Carter, to let that happen. The next question was teacher interest to complete the course, and several questions along that line. How are teachers selected? How will they be utilized later? The model that will be used will be principals will make suggestions for a team of teachers at the school. It is not an obligation to any of those teachers, so they have to agree and want to do it. And it's not the neediest teachers, it's not the highest achieving teachers. It's a differentiated mix based on the needs of that school. They even suggest that you have some teachers who need more support, some who just need to fine-tune their instructional strategies, but to have a good cohesive team that can learn from each other. They can say no, they don't have to do it. We've already had a couple of principals reach out and suggested people, because they just want to address it before the year was up, and have had some good feedback from those teachers that are excited to get the opportunity to learn evidence-based strategies based on their particular subgroup needs at their school, maybe even in their classroom. But that's how that will happen. And what will happen with the PD is teachers will not be required by a certain date or time to be a train the teacher or a model. They will share their best practices and support other teaching and learning in the school when they feel they are ready to do it. So it's not a, you get trained this week, by this week you do a lesson, by Friday you've got to share it out with everybody. It's not a timeline of training, it's when you feel ready, but the overall thought process and research-based strategy is better teachers, better instruction. It spreads through the school. So these would be people who would become better at this. They can change any time that they want to. They don't have to stay committed to it, but they will become better. And when they feel ready and they see evidence-based change in their classroom, that's at a point that they can share that out. How that will look will depend upon the needs of the school, will depend upon the needs of the grade. It might be in a PLC meeting, it might be a training session at a staff meeting, it might vary, but it's again based on the needs of that school, and the principals will work closely to be part of that process in determining not when they're ready, but how that's going to roll out at their school. What's the overall outcome of goal? Of course, we want our teachers to have a mindset that all kids can achieve and learn. We want them to meet the unique and diverse needs of all learners, including those in those targeted subgroups. It might be English language learners. We may have schools that are on a list because of a particular subgroup, but they may need support in other subgroups because they're not on the list. So this will be a strategy that can be spread across needs based on the school. Understand how to do tiered and scaffolding instruction. Explore instructional strategies to be able to do that, how to scaffold content, process, assessment, all of those things. How to do a very quick, formative, and did they get it assessment in a class. We have sometimes a mindset that a formative assessment has to be a long multiple choice test, takes a lot of time. How do you figure out real quick, do they know, do they already know it? If they don't know it, what do they know? Those types of strategies along there. So there are specific goals, and then we have, there is a very specific ASCD evaluation plan and process for how the goal will be measured as far as our learning goal. Another question was, were there other programs that could provide teachers more hands-on training that could be utilized while they're going through this training? And one of the things that was being a resource that was being considered that supports tiered lesson design is a resource called Goal Book. And the way that works, it supports teachers in how to design a lesson to meet the needs of diverse learners within the classroom. And you know, we say that a lot, but it's very hard to do. And a lot of teachers need support there. So that's something that is the committee's looking at, getting feedback from principals and teachers, and it's an option that could be available to them only if they want it. It's not a requirement. Who would be selecting the materials? That was the committee that I've already shared with you. And another question was, what are other districts doing? I do have a list of a lot of districts that have used ASCD professional development. I don't have any results for what they've seen with TSI targeted because it's the first year we've done it. So we don't have results from this type of thing specifically for TSI schools. We would have that next year. But I do have a list of schools that have used ASCD with outstanding feedback from their leaders. Two systems in North Carolina. I printed out so much stuff, I've got to find it. Moore County was one of those. And Anna, do you remember off the top of your head? Charlotte Meck. And then we have a list of national, within the United States, groups that have used it. I did not go international just because education's so different in other countries, but ASCD is an internationally known education premier group for PD. We did reach out to what are other schools doing with their money and their plan, and we're in line with what they do. Our job-embedded coaching offers more than some of the others, but I think that's important here, and that's an initiative in our district. So our job-embedded coaching is in there. Draft items that were shared from the other groups. Some are using stipends for teachers to attend PD. Some are using Solution Tree. Some are doing in-house trainers, training in-house trainers. And that works if you have, it's difficult with one person. It's difficult unless you're targeting, like teaching people how to use PowerPoint. That's very easy for one teacher to do, but it's not very successful when you're trying to have a broad change in your school for one person to do it. Math and Reading Foundations training, some are utilizing that. Some are using an Essentials of EC training. Some are working around NC STAR PD. Some have decided to target theirs at guided and leveled reading. Interactive read aloud for EC students. So they're doing a variety of things. But each solution or how they use this money or goal for the money has to be tied to the unique needs of that district based on the subgroups, and therefore every plan is different. Some of the feedback mentioned the benefits of teaming with a publishing company that also provides PD, and that's something we're certainly looking at as we move toward a curriculum purchase to align as much as is possible all of our PD around the PD that would have to occur for the new curriculum. We're working to tighten alignment of that when we get companion text. And we also evaluated the quality of the presenters because that's one of the things we wanted to look at. I printed those out. I didn't link it, but I'll be glad to pass it around. These are high-quality people, and they look like the kids in the schools. So it's a variety of appearance, and it's also a variety of outstanding areas of expertise based on what the needs of each school are. And these are their trainers. We don't know if we would have this particular one. It depends on if this is approved and how fast we can get them scheduled to move forward. Were there any other questions that we didn't cover? So please ask us if we can.
No. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you for bearing with us, more especially me, because I know I probably had the bulk of the questions. But again, this is a learning curve. And I wanted to hear the answers to those questions because it's important, to understand exactly what we're doing. How many teachers per school will be using the training?
You want to comment on that, Anna?
The minimum is 5, maximum is 10. It's based on the percentage of subgroup in the ADM that they qualify. So if they were identified because their subgroup is English learners, that's where we base their numbers. Some schools have more than one subgroup.
Right. And do I don't know if you recall, but in your data notebooks we gave you, we've got that overall summary sheet, and it lists the subgroups for each school. So that would be a good resource for you to check that out.
And we did, I talked to two principals today, happened to talk to the two principals, and they were extremely excited. Their teachers were extremely excited to be part of the project. So it's is very
Right.
concerned about the teachers.
Right.
Yeah, Ms. Tillings, buy-in is important.
Yes.
And we want teachers to be taking advantage of this PD because they want
Right.
it. And the reason.
And I will tell you, the only not interested comment I've gotten is from a principal concerned with extra training for teachers, but it's a principal that's not at one of the TSI schools. She just felt the general concern for more PD for teachers. So I think it's based on the needs, because her school's not on the list, so it wouldn't impact her. But hearing Anna say the schools that are on the list are embracing help is very positive, I think.
Well, and it sounds like you've had you had a very well-rounded committee taking a look at this, and I like the fact that you involved the principals of those schools in making this decision, because they're the ones who will ultimately drive it at the school side.
Absolutely. And I have the resources. If you want to see that, I'll be glad to pass it. If you don't, I'll put on whatever you need for more information about the groups we sought, the trainers, the actual evaluation plan, and all. It's just a whole lot of information, but it's high-quality information. ASCD, I don't have to tell you the quality of that organization. Okay, so
Any more questions?
Thank you.
you're
Thank you all
welcome.
for being patient with us. Dr. Smith?
When you talk about research-supported strategies, some of these strategies have been around for decades. SIOP for English learners, Orton-Gillingham, Wilson Method for exceptional children. How involved are we with maintaining those research-based programs while we're getting this initiative?
One of the reasons that there were some supplemental materials with the books authored by some of these presenters is to have that go-to resource. I was around when we started PLCs. I still go to my SMART Goal book all the time because I have the resource. And that was part of the intent is not to load teachers up with a book study or things to do. It's to provide some support and resource when you need to, hey, how was that? What did we say about that? And just refresh. So we always want to make sure we're doing research-based strategies for everything, and anything that we're doing that is good and effective certainly would not fall by the wayside. But obviously, we need to improve our strategic practice and our lesson planning for diverse needs to improve our student achievement.
And I guess that was my question. Those strategies worked. Language. I'm just sitting here going down the litany of really effective strategies that have been proven over time. And I just want to make sure that teachers, every time you get a new teacher, you have to start from ground zero if they've not been exposed to that.
Absolutely.
So professional development is more than just a shot in the arm. It's really ongoing, and having maintained those programs that have worked and continue to work, I just don't want us to lose sight of that
Absolutely.
emphasis.
Absolutely. And that's another reason for the team approach and that principals do the initial submit the names and ask them, and they're not required. So you end up with people dedicated and committed who want to engage in this for their schools, and when that happens, it's just more effective. Any other questions for me? Okay.
This is an action item for Target Support Schools proposal. I entertain a motion if there's no more questions.
So moved.
I'll second.
By Tracy Zukowski, seconded by Terry Sessoms. Any more questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Anna.
Ms. Gill?
Good afternoon, Chairman Wooten, Vice Chair Dr. Peggy Smith, Superintendent Renfro, members of the board, and I have two items that are time-sensitive that I'd like to present to you today, and thank you for taking the time to review those so we can hopefully get started on them. The first item is Board Exhibit 3B1, which is track and tennis court improvements. This is a bond item, and the track and tennis court improvements include repairs, drainage and resurfacing of the tracks at Smithfield Selma, South Johnston, and West Johnston, as well as the replacements of courts 1 through 4 at South Johnston High School. This project does not just include the resurfacing, but also includes the repair of improper drainage on all 3 of the tracks that is damaging the rubber surfacing, impeding those being able to be taken care of and maintained over the years. The project will also add French drainage along the interior perimeter of the track. Further at South Johnston, there's concrete flumes that will be removed and catch basins will be raised on the football field for safer play while tying in for the drainage system. All areas will need to be regraded, sodded, ready for football season. We've also had a geotechnical firm to come in and take core samples of specifically Triple S's track. The testing revealed that the asphalt track had not been properly constructed and needs to be on a better subgrade. That includes removing the concrete track, moisture conditions, and paving 3 inches of asphalt, followed by rubber granular surfacing. All 3 of these projects, also the projects include the tennis courts at South Johnston, which would include the complete removal of those 6 inches of aggregate subgrade installed and 1.5 inches of asphalt, followed by the acrylic tennis court surfacing. So this project has ended up being much more than just pulling up the old and putting the new, because once we got in there, began to work with the folks, we realized that we needed to go ahead and correct and do it right. So when we put this out for bids, we put those specifications on the process, fully expecting the price tag to be higher than what we had anticipated. After we did the bid opening, we went through a process where we looked at what was our wish list and began to work backwards on what was going to be a good product for all of these while making the improvements that we needed to make. And so the number that you see today, your bid tab sheet shows you the initial price with every bell and whistle. But the price you see here is us making some choices about what kinds of products to use. I will say even the price tag you see today includes making those surfaces better than they were before. Not just the drainage and the upkeep, but just the, I can't say the word, how high the actual surface is. So I think it's actually was 3/8, and I think we're going up to a 1/2 inch. So it will be better in the long run and able to be well maintained. Some of the things we were hopeful for was certainly some more colored surfacing, just because I liked it. Didn't work out. So we'd like to award this project to Romeo Guest Construction out of Durham for the amount of $1,909,549, and it's recommended to you today for approval. Just like to get this done by football season. Got work to do.
Track and tennis court improvements as action item. Entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Teresa Grant.
I'll second.
Second by Terry Sessions. Any questions?
We are, when you said we had to pare down, we are still doing the infrastructure improvements
ma'am.
to the drainage
Yes,
and those
ma'am.
kinds of things.
A lot of what the paring down was are some of those wish lists that we would have liked to have had, that we were in hopes that we could afford, until you get to a point where you have to do the things that are not as glamorous, and that is to make sure that it's done right on the bottom. Yeah. And that it lasts over time.
More questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
The next item I have is Board Exhibit 3B2. This is regarding Policy 4110 for attendance. Policy 4110 was last amended, deleting the 91% seat time required for course credit, and the grades and numbers of absences were deleted at that time. So there were numbers, and then there was the grade of the 59 or below for course credit. Due to ongoing concerns regarding attendance and time spent for instruction, it's being brought back to the board today on the recommendation of the Policy Review Committee to revert back to our archived policy. Now, again, in statute, we do not have a seat time requirement, but the recommendation of policy review is the importance of instruction and the need to have that counted daily as a part of course credit in Johnston County Public Schools. So it's recommended to approve this in exigent circumstances. I'll bring it back to you, I believe, and Mr. Lawrence, I hope, is over there on that phone, to formally ratify it in August. And the need for that is because this is a communication that needs to be out to our principals and in our parent gazette as we begin printing. And I bring that to you for that exigent approval.
Policy 4110, attendance, entertain a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Smith, seconded by Mr. Johnson. Any questions? Before we vote, I would like to thank the policy committee for putting the teeth back into the attendance policy. I appreciate y'all meeting on to get that done. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
And just to let you know that in our upcoming leadership meeting and in an email that Dr. Coates and I will be doing jointly before that, we will be communicating this out ASAP and ensuring that our folks, as well as our social workers and student services, are also aware of all of these impacts as we revert back to the archive policy.
Thank you, Ms.
All right.
Gill. Dr. Renfro.
Mr. Chairman, at this time I'd ask that we enter into executive session for the purpose of consulting with the board attorney and to discuss personnel items in accordance with North Carolina General Statutes 115C-319 and 143.318.11, subsections A1 and A3.
Entertain a motion. Motion by Ronald Johnson, second by Tracy Zukowski. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 6-0.